experience, the most effective methods of teaching children English are those that occur when the child is unaware that he or she is actually learning. Games in particular provide a natural way for a child to learn without even realizing it. In younger children, we can introduce a new game in such a way that they know no other way of playing it. In other words, they only associate playing the game in English. It would actually be unnatural for them to play that particular game in any other language. In this section, we shall focus on some of the games that my family have accepted to be games that we only play in English, and I shall present them in the age order that we first introduced the games to our own children. Of course, this is not to say that these games are only popular in English-speaking countries, but rather that they have been naturally accepted as games that my family play in English. We shall then look at games that we can play together with older children, such as card games. And then we should consider how games can be used to give a child the impetus to improve their English proficiency. In many cases, a parent lecturing a young teenager about the importance of being fluent in English and how it will dramatically improve their career prospects may not actually be as effective as the child's need to know the vocabulary of their favourite online Facebook game. This is just a fact of life, and we as parents should always be alert to how we can best exploit a natural interest in such a way that it will improve our children's English learning, whether that be through a computer game, a music group, or a favourite film. So to complete the section, we shall look at some different iPhone or iPad games and some online Facebook games that we can actually encourage our teenage children to play, safe in the knowledge that these games will help improve our child's English proficiency. Thank you. Memory games are very popular amongst preschoolers and can also be used as a great way for young children to learn English. I have included a memory game as a downloadable file which is based on a sea life theme. You should print out the memory game and then glue it to a piece of card before cutting up the squares. I find that before beginning a memory game of this type with younger learners, it is always a good idea to use the cards from the game as flashcards so as to introduce new vocabulary to the children. Then another preliminary game that can be played before playing the memory game proper can be where all the cards are laid face down on the floor and the children and yourself take it in turns to pick up cards, state the name of the animal, and then lay the card face up on the floor whether there is a pair there or not. And then obviously when there is a pair, to put it together with the corresponding card. Finally, the memory game itself can be played once all the vocabulary has been practiced to a reasonable level. The main difference between the proper memory game and the previous one is that the children need to also remember where the pair of the card that they have picked up is, and if they pick up an incorrect card, they have to put both cards back face down where they picked them up from. There are a number of these types of memory games available on the internet as flash-based games or as apps on iPhones or iPads. However, I find that the old-fashioned way of playing the game is far more effective, especially for young children. This type of memory game also makes a great warm-up exercise for children within classroom conditions at the start of a lesson to help get the children interested in what you're about to teach. So this particular memory game would be ideal before a lesson whose theme was sea life or even animals. Another type of memory game, which is probably more suitable for slightly older children, let's say in the 5+ age category, is Kim's game. This game derives its name from Rudyard Kipling's 1901 novel, Kim, and is a game that is supposed to develop a person's ability to observe and remember details. It is also a great game to use in English language learning. The game is based around placing a number of items on a tray or a table, let's say between 10 and 15 items, and giving the children 10 seconds to memorize all the items. The children are then supposed to look away from the table while you remove one of the items. The children then have to guess which item was removed. When played for the purposes of learning English, we should begin the game by saying aloud each item in turn, and then holding each item aloft and asking the children to name that particular item in English. Once you are confident that the children know all the vocabulary, you can begin to play the game. It is good practice when the child is guessing which item was taken away to ask the child to construct their guess in a full sentence. For example, the scissors are missing, or the apple is not there, or you took the pen away. Again, Kim's game can be used as a great 10-minute warm-up activity before the start of a lesson within a classroom environment. Okay, in this section we are going to look at games in the car. Games in the car really are a great way to improve your children's English, especially during a long car journey where children have a tendency to get bored. There are actually a number of good games that can be played in the car, but I'm going to present those particular games that my family now only associate with English, and I will run through them in the age order that we first introduce them to our children. I Spy is probably the most well-known car game in the English language, and is a game that we actually started playing with my eldest daughter when she was just 2 years old, so before she could spell. We created an age-appropriate variant of the game which was based around the colour of an item rather than the first letter of its name. So, for example, if the item that was spied was the sky, the phrase would be, I spy with my little eye something that is blue. For a tree, it would be, I spy with my little eye something that is brown and green. When my daughter was a bit older, we started to play the more classic variant of the game, namely, I spy with my little eye something beginning with S. Staying on the I Spy theme for a bit, there is a totally unrelated car game based around a series of books called the I Spy books, which were very popular in the 70s and 80s, and which Michelin, of the tyre fame, have brought out a new version of them. You can find them on Amazon. I'll include a link in the supplemental materials. And these I Spy books are very popular with older children when in the car, and are available through Amazon for the price of a cup of coffee. So they come highly recommended for long car journeys and another great way of improving their English proficiency. Okay, the second game that we play in the car only in English, and it was the second game that we introduced to our children, is the I Went to the Zoo game. And we first introduced this game to our children at about the age of 4 to 5. The game is based around everyone in the car saying what they saw on a fictitious trip to the zoo. The game begins with the youngest person in the car saying, I went to the zoo and I saw a and saying what animal that they saw. For example, a lion. Then the next youngest repeats what the youngest child had said and adds their own animal. So for example, they would say, I went to the zoo and I saw a lion and a giraffe. Then the next person carries on saying what they saw, and this is repeated until someone cannot remember the animals that were previously said and in the correct order. As well as practicing animal vocabulary, this game also practices the simple past tense. You can find out more about this game in the ESL worksheet at the zoo, which is included with this course, as this particular game works very well as a warm-up activity within a classroom environment. The final car game that we shall look at today, which is very popular with my girls now that they are older, is 20 Questions. In this game, the youngest person in the car simply thinks of something. Now it should be an animal, a vegetable, or a mineral. And then the rest of the passengers in the car have 20 questions to try and guess what it is that they are. Questions have to be asked in such a way that the youngest child can answer yes or no. For example, an obvious question would be, are you an animal? If the youngest child had thought of a tree, for example, he or she would answer no. And then the next person would ask a yes-no type question. As the name of the game suggests, the group have 20 questions to find out what it is that the youngest child has chosen. Once the game has been won or lost, the next youngest child gets to choose and think of something that they are. This game is obviously requiring a certain standard of English, but it can be easily adapted so that the least proficient in English is able to both play and enjoy the game. As your children get older, it seems that it gets more and more difficult to sit them around a table to play a card game or a board game, and it is more likely that your teenage child will play games on a games console, or an iPhone or an iPad, or even a social type game on the likes of Facebook. Rather than discourage your teenager to play games on these platforms, a better tactic is to try and encourage them to play the right kind of games on these platforms. In this lecture, we shall take a look at a number of iPhone games that will greatly improve your child's English proficiency, as well as a couple of Facebook games which need a good knowledge of English for your child to successfully play them. iPhone games. The 3 iPhone games that we shall look at are all word games, but word games which involve a certain amount of gameplay. Number 1 is Hexiled, which is an escape game with words. English is only one aspect of this game, as tactics also play a big part, so there is an incentive there to play. The second game we shall look at will be Quatqui, which is a game where you spell small words along a path. Just rearrange the letters to spell the word. Again, there is a certain amount of tactics involved. Finally, the third game that we shall look at is called Letterpress, which is my personal favourite word type game, as there is the opportunity to play against English-speaking people through the Apple Game Center, and thus your child can learn new words that their opponent spells out. The 2 Facebook social type games that we shall look at are Football 11, which is a football management type game, and which requires a good proficiency in English to do well, which of course is a natural incentive for your child to improve their English. And secondly, Scrabble. If you can't convince your teenage child to play board games with the family, then at least try and coax them into playing them on Facebook. The good thing is that the social side means that they can play against actual English speakers from around the world. Of course, Scrabble is not just about mastering the vocabulary of the language. It also requires a lot of good gameplay and tactics, which means that a good tactician, a good player, can be on a more of a level playing field. Again, this is a good incentive for your child to play the game.